The San Antonio Spurs over the last couple years have been, well, they've still been a playoff team and a competitive playoff team nonetheless. However, long gone are the days of championship aspirations. Greg Popovich is nearing the end of his coaching career. The roster looks so much different compared to even a few years ago. And as of now, as of this video, they have a losing record. In fact, 538.com predicts the Spurs would finish with an abysmal record, at least by their standards. If the projections turn out to be correct, the 2019-20 season would be the first time since 1997 that the Spurs would have a losing season. However, they still have a decent shot to make the playoffs because the bottom of the West has been quite poor, with many other teams underachieving as well. Anyway, how's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today, let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. Why are they so mediocre this year? What are the problems with this team? Should they finally start a full-on rebuild and blow it up? Anyway, let's rewind a bit to the summer of 2018. At this time, there were tensions surrounding the direction of the team, namely Kawhi Leonard. After getting a severely sprained ankle in the previous playoffs and struggling with a quad injury all year, he sat out a ton of games. There was so much uncertainty in the air, and fans questioned if Kawhi really was injured, or if he just refused to play. So by the summer of 2018, a decision was finally made. Kawhi demanded a trade and he was traded to the Toronto Raptors, in exchange for DeMar DeRozan. Now, the Spurs did pretty well in the trade considering what they had to work with, because they simply did not have much leverage after Kawhi publicly made it known he wanted out. And DeRozan's a great player, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, he's had his fair share of criticisms, but he was a 4-time All-Star. However, have you guys noticed something weird? We've always talked about DeRozan so much back when he was in Toronto. We've seen so many quotes from him, and he was a large part of NBA culture. We criticized him for having subpar games and for not showing up in the playoffs. And other things like not shooting very well, not shooting that many threes, and we'd compare him to other shooting guards like Klay Thompson or Bradley Beal. Basically, he was at the center of a ton of NBA discussions. But right when he arrived in San Antonio, nobody even cared about him anymore. It's almost like he got thrown into the void and disappeared from the NBA mainstream. While San Antonio is obviously a smaller market than Toronto, it's still shocking how little recognition he gets now. We never hear about him having any good games or even bad games anymore, even though he still has plenty of both of them. The truth is, the main reason for that is because he hasn't done anything special since he got to San Antonio. And also partly because, well, joining San Antonio usually erases a person's individual identity. They now become part of this bigger team identity. That kinda happened to LaMarcus Aldridge too. DeRozan's 2018-19 season was pretty good. He was still putting up over 20 points a game, but basically stopped taking three-pointers. That leads me to my next point. In the 2018-19 season, the San Antonio Spurs were dead last in three-pointers attempted per game, which is kinda funny because they shot a league best 39% from that distance. The decrease in volume is attributed to the Spurs having two of the best, most prolific mid-range scorers in the league, DeRozan and Aldridge. But perhaps the biggest change that came with getting DeRozan is the Spurs' ridiculous drop-off in defensive rating. With Kawhi and with Danny Green, they were a top defensive team, but even without Kawhi for large parts of the 2017-18 season, the Spurs still had the third best defensive rating. With DeRozan in 2018-19, they dropped off to 19th, and in this current season, they're 22nd. So while they drastically decreased their threes, they're still a top 10 offense. It's the defensive side of the ball where they've been really faltering, as expected, as they lost two of the best wing defenders in the league. In a funny interview in early December, a reporter asked Popovich about his team's defense, and how they've been struggling. Pop asked the reporter, quote, "What's my best defensive lineup?" The reporter responded with, "I'm not a coach, so I don't know." To which Pop responded with, "I am a coach and I don't know." That about sums up the Spurs defense throughout the season. Obviously, it's a team effort and we can't pin all of the defensive failures on DeRozan. He's been having a career year in terms of scoring efficiency, something he's always gotten flack for, and offensively, he's done a solid job at carrying the Spurs whenever they're on a scoring drought. So what else is wrong with the team then? Well, let's move on to the next point, hustle plays. Since 2015, NBA.com has started to track a new stat, hustle plays. Things like deflections, recovering loose balls, boxing out, and all those other intangibles that were not measured before. So far in the 2019-20 season, the Spurs are near the bottom 10 in loose balls recovered. They're in the bottom 10 in deflections per game, and they're around the middle of the pack in total box outs. These are the things that made the Spurs so good over the past few decades. While they did have tremendous amounts of talent at certain points, they've always been very good even without much talent, because those hustle plays always kept them in the game. They were always part of the Spurs' identity, but now that's no longer the case. Coach Popovich has been well known for putting the team's identity above any individual star, and it's worked successfully for a long time. However, for this roster, there's just not enough raw talent to carry them, nor are the role players hustling hard enough to keep them in the game. As you can imagine, this is a bad combination, and that's why they've been struggling. Transitioning to the next point, the Spurs roster is just not that good. The players are just not good. The Western Conference is as competitive as ever, and if you compare the players on the Spurs to any of the other top 6 or top 7 Western Conference teams, you'd see that the Spurs are sorely lacking in star power and talent. While LaMarcus Aldridge and DeRozan have carried the team for the past 2 years, they're getting up there in age too, with Aldridge being 34 years old. DeRozan is great and he's had some amazing stretches of basketball, but even then, he's not a superstar and he never was. He's just a solid all-star in his best days. Regardless, the rest of the team is absurdly average. Some have their strengths, especially guys like DeJounte Murray being a defensive stud. But most players have glaring weaknesses in their games and they cannot continue to cover each other. I mean, on paper, their team looks alright, I guess, but compared to the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Rockets, talent-wise, they're all far superior to the Spurs. Additionally, unlike other rebuilding teams, the Spurs are stuck in no man's land. Yeah, it sounds weird to say that the Spurs have no future, considering how well run the organization is, but that's exactly how it's been and it's going to continue for the next 2 years. Among their young talent, they've got Lonnie Walker, DeJounte Murray, maybe Derek White, or Jakob Poeltl or Trey Lyles, but not really. Their young prospects pale in comparison to other rebuilding teams who are stacked with young talent. It also doesn't help that guys like Lonnie Walker have not been getting many minutes. It's not like the Spurs have anything to lose, so they could play him more. Coach Pop has always been like this though. He's always been hesitant to giving his young players significant minutes. He commented on Lonnie's playing time and said that, quote, "He's gotten some minutes here and there and he's doing his best to take advantage of them. He's a young guy learning how to be a pro and he's taken a lot of positive steps." Fortunately, even with all these mishaps and inconsistent play, there is a bright side to all of this. While their salary cap is completely filled right now, by the end of the 2021 season, they'll have a ton of cap space. Everyone will be off the books. DeRozan, Aldridge, Rudy Gay, Patty Mills, most of their big contracts will expire by then. Starting in 2021, that's when the Spurs can stop meddling in mediocrity and undergo a full rebuild from scratch. As of now, their plan is still to remain competitive for this season and the next season, and maybe they can rack up some wins and make the playoffs again, I don't know. But these 2 years will be crucial in transitioning them for the future. Fans should pay attention to how this team goes from a veteran-dominated lineup to a younger lineup, as more minutes will be given to them. Hopefully, they can pick up some more younger prospects along the way too. Anyway, that's all folks. That sums up how the Spurs have fallen off in recent times. While they were able to exchange Kawhi for DeMar, as expected, they got worse. Combined with their defensive woes and a lack of energy and hustle, this team simply isn't what it was before. The Spurs' identity has been lost, and it might not return for a long time. The future with Popovich is uncertain. He's still signed to a contract for 3 more years, but that's not significant. We've seen coaches before retire out of the blue due to fatigue or, in Pop's case, old age. I think we should enjoy these last few years with him before he retires. Even if the Spurs aren't contenders, they're still a fun team to watch. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about the Spurs' current situation, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.